Hello, welcome to InfoHub Extended. A recent confirmation of the presence of vesicular disease in neighboring Venezuela has seen the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, GLDA, on high alert in Region 1. Vesicular disease generally refers to disease that causes blisters on various body parts of livestock and in some cases humans. Included in this group of foot and mouth disease, vesicular stomatitis, swine vesicular disease, and vesicular exanthema of swine.
Dr. Colbert Bowen, who is heading up the GLDA's Animal Health Unit, said its monitoring and surveillance mechanism was activated to reduce the probability of the disease being transmitted to local farms.
Because of the situation in Venezuela, there's always this threat of somebody wanting to bring over a live animal or some sort of meat from those animals that are affected to Guyana. So it was necessary for us to mount a surveillance and monitoring operation in those areas so that we could reduce the probability of somebody bringing those products and live animals across the border into Guyana.
As part of the GLDA's monitoring and surveillance mechanism, personnel were placed in Region 1, Northwest District. They are currently carrying out outreaches and educating about the safeguards.
We've decided what we need to do is ensure that we increase our vigilance, our monitoring and surveillance at the location bordering with Venezuela, and that's our Northwest District. We've sent in a few officers there, led by one of our veterinarians, and they're presently on ground in Region 1, specifically the Mabroom area. Because of the influx of and movement of people from Venezuela.
Foot and mouth disease is considered as perhaps the most destructive among vesicular diseases. This is because of its transmission rate and capacity to affect large numbers of livestock quickly. Dr. Bowen identifies the common symptoms among cloven hoof animals such as swine, cattle, sheep, and goats.
Well, a vesicle basically is what we call in our local language a boil. So you might find a boil in the mouth of the animal. So you might have drooling, and when you look at it, there might be off feed, and you find that that's one of the symptoms that you see. Secondly, in going with the name foot-and-mouth disease, it affects the hoof of animals. So you find on just above the hoof of the animal, you find the same raised boils and so forth. You find that there's separation of the hoof, on the animals. So you'd find these signs and symptoms. One, looking at the animal, might be off feed, might be drooling. You're going to see them limping, lameness in the animal. And those are basically signs that you'd find.
Though common, the symptoms shown are more easily recognizable in pigs and cows compared to that of small ruminants such as sheep and goats. Here is Dr. Bowen again.
You find that swine are most affected in terms of lameness. There's a clear indication, clear sign of separation of hoof in swine. As it relates to cattle, you find both separation of the hoof, lameness, and you find also them being affected with vesicles in the mouth. However, sheep and goat, the signs and symptoms are not so clear. They tend to be more resistant. You find some lameness, but they tend to withstand the disease to a great extent. You would not readily see signs and symptoms in sheep and goat as opposed to cattle and swine. As a result of that, we need to pay much stricter precaution to the fact that sheep and goat might be coming over. And we've had instances in which some of our farmers would have brought sheep from Venezuela into one of our regions, and we had to mount an excise to destroy those animals. How is it transferred from one animal to the next? There's probability of contact, direct contact, and the virus could be spread through aerosols. When those vesicles would have burst, they get mixed up with dust. That dust is blown. It could be transferred. Human beings handling an infected animal and then handling the animal that's healthy, the disease is transmitted. FMD is quite a serious disease because of the rate of spread. It spreads very quickly and very easily. No, it does not affect human beings. I should say guardedly, because there have been cases of humans having rashes, right? You could probably consider that as them infected. But the devastation that it caused to animals, it doesn't cause to human beings. So a human being will have rashes on their hand that's associated with FMD virus, but it's not as devastated as an animal being infected with FMD.
The veterinarian advises that farmers and other stakeholders should follow prescribed procedures for importing animals and animal products and report immediately animals observed with symptoms. The number to call is 220-6557. Taking swift action reduces the risks of the disease spreading and bringing economic ruin to those who depend on cattle farming for their livelihood.
What we've done over time is that, considering FMD as one of the most serious disease for us, we've been discussing with farmers as it relates to how they respond to a case of FMD in their flock. And we would say to farmers, if you see animals with vesicles in their mouth and lameness, call us right away. Farmers are advised to cordon or prevent movement of their animals. Don't try to sell the animals to, let's say, the butchers, because you recognize they probably might not, be looking well. If that's done, there's a strong possibility of transmission. So we ask farmers, firstly, as soon as possible, to call our staff. One, to visit you and verify that it is, or to say that it's not FMD or a vesicular disease. The other thing is that we ask farmers to prevent any person from visiting here. Farmers have this tendency to, if they have a situation on their farm, to ask a friend, ask a fellow farmer to come visit and give an opinion. In a case where FMD is suspected, and that happens, there's a strong possibility of the virus being transmitted from the farm, the infected farm, to your friend's farm. So we ask that you avoid, people visiting your farm in a situation.
According to Dr. Bowen, once contacted, the GLDA will act expeditiously to bring the situation under control in keeping with the agency's emergency response plans.
If you inform our officers of the possibility of you having that disease, we would quickly have our officers go investigate, collect samples so that we could do further diagnosis. As I said before, one of the things that we strictly say, once is a vesicular disease, we would want to institute movement control, institute quarantine of the particular farm. We would also proceed to investigate whether there is any contact in terms of, you would have sold animals from that farm to another farm or to some butcher, whether you would have had visitors, and to look at where you would have gotten the animals from, if there's any new additions to the farm, whether you would have visited an area that we know that has foot-and-mouth disease. And those are the things that we use to come up with in addition to taking samples, diagnosis. But initially, what we strive to do is to ensure that there is no spread until we determine whether we're dealing with foot-and-mouth disease or another vesicular disease.
A simulation exercise was held in Mabaruma, Northwest District, on May 13 to test the country's emergency response plans for an emergency emanating from an outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease or any other epidemic. At its conclusion, local and international experts gave it high marks. Foot-and-mouth disease specialist and PAHO consultant Dr. Victor Saraiva.
I was impressed not only with the EPI group readiness and observation of the procedures, but also with the coordination between those involved. When we got the roadblocks, when we went to the farm, everybody is well aware of their role in this study.
Meanwhile, Acting Director General of the Civil Defense Commission, Lieutenant Colonel Kester Craig, said the Guyana Livestock Development Authority has proven its capacity to manage should an emergency arise.
I think from the technical perspective, what I've observed, because I was able to observe the Incident Command Center, or Incident Command Post, the checkpoints, the quarantine, and the actual focus area. So that was a good experience for me as representing the Civil Defense Commission, because what we like to understand is what is happening at all sectors. I think for the authority, it's important that you know your role and responsibility and take lead in what you have to do. And that's what was demonstrated.
For Superintendent Elton Beard of the Guyana Police Force, the exercise was timely. It provided an opportunity for himself and ranks to be more aware of the procedures involved in the management of a declared disaster or emergency area.
When I looked at the structure, I recognized that this is not only about the FMD, but it's in dealing with any kind of disaster and how we can mobilize our resources and all these things. And so the experience indeed was good for us.
The exercise, which involved 57 persons, inclusive of representatives from PAHO, WHO, ECO, Ministry of Public Health and other agencies, aimed to evaluate relevance of the Emergency Preparedness Plan, test the Guyana Livestock Development Authority's ability to respond to an emergency, rapidly contain the possible spread of suspected disease from a focal farm, while at the same time establishing the origin of the disease and the extent of its spread using epidemiological methods according to the preparedness plan.
Guyana has been deemed free from foot-and-mouth disease without vaccination. This has been realized through the Guyana Livestock Development Authority's veterinary interventions that minimize the threat of disease from internal and external sources. This in turn has allowed for easier trade in animals and animal products internationally. This brings us to the end of another edition of InfoHub Extended. Join us again next time. Goodbye.